The name Wayne Carini brings to mind visions of high-stakes auctions, rare vintage cars, and expert restorations. However, most fans were unaware of the tale behind the gleaming chrome and thundering engines, a legal battleground that threatened to destroy his brand and company. Carini was at the core of legal action that rocked the classic vehicle business, from a rare 1934 Pierce Arrow coupe caught in a complex web of fraud to a Lamborghini Gallardo sale that resulted in a judicial dispute. Were they regrettable business errors or something much darker? Hold on tight, for the journey through Wayne Carini's legal issues is as exciting and unpredictable as the machines worth millions of dollars that he fixes. In the field of restoring vintage cars, Wayne Carini has long been considered a giant. He is well known among collectors, enthusiasts, and anyone who value car history because of his love for restoring classic cars. Nevertheless, Carini's career has not been without its share of legal issues, even with his achievements. His reputation and business operations have been greatly harmed by these struggles, which have lasted for several years and involved numerous high-profile disagreements. The sale of a rare 1934 Pierce Arrow coupe was one of the most notable examples. When Australian collector Robert Richmond attempted to purchase the car in 2010, the conflict started. Eager to acquire the vintage vehicle, Richmond hired American restorer Gary Dixon to examine, buy, and repair it before sending it to Australia. With the assurance that he would soon receive the car, he paid $98,000 in advance. But everything swiftly descended into chaos. Dixon ran into financial issues after initially agreeing to help with the sale and renovation. His company suffered throughout the years, and in 2016 it was finally declared bankrupt. The Pierce Arrow coupe's ownership and status consequently became more ambiguous. Richmond, who had already spent a substantial amount of money on the transaction, was unaware of what would happen to his valuable asset. Richmond repeatedly tried to get in touch with Dixon for updates, but he only got evasive promises and no specific information about the location of his car. Dixon made a last-ditch decision in 2017 that would spark a legal battle. He sold the car to a reputable vintage car dealer, Going Motors Corporation, without telling Richmond. Going Motors then got in touch with Wayne Carini for an appraisal of the car because they thought they were making a legal sale. The Pierce Arrow coupe's value was estimated by Carini, a seasoned industry specialist, to be between $100,000 and $120,000. He chose to pay $110,000 for the car since he was sure it was authentic. It looked like a simple transaction. All parties assumed that the sale was legal because Dixon supplied the required paperwork. Carini completed the purchase and subsequently resold the car through RM auctions without knowing about the previous disagreement between Dixon and Richmond. Realizing how rare the vintage vehicle was, the auction firm made a healthy profit by selling it for $275,000. But Richmond quickly discovered the startling reality. He was resolved to fight back because his car had been sold without his permission. He sued many people in 2018, including Going Motors, F40 Motorsports, and Wayne Carini. Richmond's legal team contended that the car had been sold fraudulently and that he was the legitimate owner. Due diligence in high-value classic automobile purchases was called into doubt, and Carini's business methods came under unwelcome scrutiny as a result of the case's extensive media coverage. Over the course of the two-year legal battle, both sides offered testimony and supporting documentation. The court finally decided in Richmond's favor in June 2020, confirming that he was the rightful owner of the 1934 Pierce Arrow coupe. The court found that Gary Dixon had committed fraud by selling the car without permission, even though Carini had been cleared of any deliberate misconduct. Dixon's conviction for embezzlement solidified the case's importance in the field of automobiles. The Pierce Arrow coupe's final buyer received payment for restoration costs as part of the decision, and Richmond was ultimately able to have his vehicle back. The case had a long-lasting effect on Carini's reputation in spite of this result. The dispute served as a reminder of the difficulties of selling vintage cars, where legal ownership and provenance are crucial factors. This was not the only instance in which Carini was involved in court cases. In 2011, a dispute over a 2007 Lamborghini Gallardo resulted in yet another lawsuit, which was another noteworthy instance. When a customer named Joe 312D bought the expensive sports car from F40 Motorsports, the argument started. According to the car's marketing, it came with a high-end luggage kit worth $87,000. But the luxury package wasn't there when the car was delivered. Frustrated by the missing part, Joe 312D tried to contact F40 Motorsports and Carini to get more information. However, he claims that his emails and grievances were disregarded, which forced him to take legal action. The lawsuit claimed that the absence of the luggage bundle amounted to a breach of contract, and that the advertisement formed a legally binding agreement. Important information on the transaction was disclosed throughout the court proceedings. Documentation supported the plaintiff's claims by confirming that the luxury package was, in fact, included in the initial transaction. Carini and F40 Motorsports decided to reach an out-of-court settlement in order to avoid a protracted legal struggle. Carini personally contacted the client as a courtesy, making sure that FedEx sent the missing luggage package and a spare key that had been withheld before. These legal issues brought to light serious issues with how the classic vehicle industry operates. Carini's involvement in these cases created significant concerns regarding oversight and due diligence, even if it did not imply willful misconduct. Due to their great worth, luxury and vintage cars require thorough documentation and unambiguous ownership confirmation. Any neglect in these areas can result in costly losses, drawn-out legal disputes, and harm to one's reputation. Wayne Carini is still regarded as a renowned person in the vehicle restoration industry in spite of these setbacks. His business is still driven by his love of vintage automobiles, and his knowledge is still well respected. He and others in the sector have learned important lessons from these episodes, though. It is impossible to overestimate the significance of openness, accurate documentation, and proactive communication. The 1934 Pierce Arrow Coupe and the 2007 Lamborghini Gallardo instances highlight how complicated trading in vintage cars can be. To make sure that transactions are lawful and equitable, buyers, sellers, and restorers must negotiate a complicated web of legal considerations. Carini's career has certainly been impacted by these legal issues, but they have also given him important insights into the necessity of strict business processes. Legal protections will become more and more important as the vintage car market develops, protecting all stakeholders. The experiences of Wayne Carini serve as a reminder that, if appropriate safeguards are not followed, even the most well-meaning people may end himself embroiled in legal issues. The knowledge gained from these events will probably affect future high-value car transactions, guaranteeing increased accountability and industry trust. These stories also demonstrate how crucial it is to keep up solid bonds with customers, dealers, and legal counsel in order to prevent needless conflicts and to establish a company that values honesty and client happiness. Wayne, who was born in the early 1950s, was raised in a home where cars were a way of life rather than merely a mode of mobility. His father, Bob Carini, owned Continental Auto Limited, a modest but distinguished firm that specialized in the restoration of luxury European cars, and was a well-respected technician. Wayne had always been captivated by the artistry involved in restoring cars. Wayne was watching his father painstakingly work on vintage Mercedes-Benzes, Jaguars, and Ferraris, while other kids played with toy vehicles. It was obvious that cars will play a big role in his future. Wayne's father's passion for the trade had a big impact on his early years. Along with being a talented mechanic, Bob was a stickler for doing things correctly, no matter how long it took. Wayne's dedication to excellence established a benchmark that he would uphold throughout his professional life. Wayne showed an excellent eye for detail and an understanding of the complexities of auto mechanics even as a young child. He was able to recognize cars by their engines by the time he was in elementary school, which would later become one of his signature abilities. Growing up around vintage cars may sound like a dream come true, but Wayne's early years weren't without challenges. The family struggled financially since, despite its esteem, the car restoration business wasn't always successful. His father frequently gave up personal time with his family in order to maintain the business's viability. Wayne learned early on that hard work, sacrifice, and an uncompromising dedication to one's trade were necessary for success after seeing firsthand the difficulties of managing a small business. When Wayne's father's health started to deteriorate, it was the defining tragedy of his early years. Once a resilient and industrious worker, Bob Carini began to suffer from severe health problems that made it difficult for him to manage the company. It was heartbreaking for Wayne to watch his father, whom he looked up to and idolized, suffer. At a time when most teenagers were preoccupied with their studies and social lives, Wayne found himself taking on an increasingly important role in the family business as Bob's condition deteriorated. It was a tremendous hardship to witness his father suffer while juggling the obligations of a developing company. Wayne worked long hours in the shop with mechanics, learning the skill as a need as much as a love. Knowing that Wayne would eventually have to continue the family tradition, Bob taught his son everything he could despite his illness. Their already close relationship grew even stronger throughout this trying time. Bob's health eventually deteriorated to the point where he was unable to work. Wayne was compelled to assume management of Continental Auto Limited at an early age. It was a difficult shift. He had to deal with growing stress, financial difficulties, and the psychological effects of losing his father, who passed away from his sickness. Along with the difficulty of maintaining the company, Wayne also had to deal with the deep sorrow of losing the man who had served as his most important mentor and role model. Following the death of his father, Wayne had some of the most trying years of his life. Maintaining the company was a daily battle. Without his father's guidance, Wayne had to face new challenges as the car restoration industry changed. There were times when he wondered if he could go on. There were periods when the future appeared uncertain, and financial stress was a major concern. But Wayne persisted out of pure willpower and a strong desire to pay tribute to his father. Wayne's reputation as a skilled and careful car restorer started to expand in spite of the hardship. He made calculated choices to focus on upscale restorations in order to serve a privileged clientele that prioritized quality above speed. His business steadied over time, and the classic vehicle world began to recognize him. He started working with collectors who trusted him to restore their valuable cars as word got out about his talent and commitment. When Wayne was asked to star in the television series Chasing Classic Cars, which would chronicle his restoration endeavors and his encounters with the most remarkable cars in the world, it was his big break. With its behind-the-scenes glimpse of the laborious process of restoring vintage cars to life, the show immediately became popular. Wayne never forgot the hardships that had molded him, even though chasing classic cars provided him notoriety and financial security. He became the man he is now as a result of his early struggles, the death of his father, and the difficulties of operating a business in the face of adversity. He continued the values his father had instilled in him, including honesty, diligence, and the value of fine craftsmanship. Wayne still uses his art to pay tribute to his father today. Each vehicle he repairs pays homage to the principles that Bob Carini taught him. His legacy lies not just in the exquisitely repaired cars that leave his shop, but also in his tenacity, enthusiasm, and unrelenting commitment to his work. Through his art, he demonstrates that one can achieve greatness despite sorrow and leave a legacy that will last for many years.